Okay. Hello, everyone. Good evening, or good morning or afternoon, depending on when you're listening. Welcome to the 90th episode of bardadvice, a D&D slash TTRPG slash nerd-centric podcast where I, Charles Chaz Yazik, the DM, the Bard, do my best to answer any questions that you might have in that orbit. We are returning from a week off. So last week we didn't have an episode because I was doing the 48-hour film festival. We could talk a little bit about that in a moment. But we are here this evening, and thank you all for joining us. I hope that everyone is well. Glad to see all of the regulars in chat. So before we do get started, just a reminder of everyone for the email on the show, which is bardadvice@gmail.com. It also looks like bardadvice. Please send all your questions, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques, etc. to bardadvice@gmail.com. If you want to get yourself some merch, you can do so over at manshorts.com, or more recently, we've partnered with Kraken Dice to create limited dice sets. So you can go over to krakendice.com and get yourself one of those 4 Man Shorts sets. And I think there's still some left. And then if you want to contribute to anything that I'm doing musically, you can do so directly via PayPal, Cash App, or Venmo, all of which are Yazik, YAHZICK. We'd like to also, at the top of the hour, please thank all of our members, patrons, super chatters. Remind everybody to please like, comment, subscribe, turn on notifications, rate the podcast, join the Discord. I know that River put a link in there. On that note, too, in the Discord, which is a really cool thing that I saw earlier, is that Ron, our friend Ron from the show, of Ron and Ruby, has started posting, I believe it's in the music tab in the Discord, his readings of The Lonesome Night in October. So that's really cool. He's put them on YouTube, so I don't know if he's got all of them, but he's certainly got the first couple. So check those out, because those are really cool. That'll be a fun listen. And I think that that's all the major housekeeping stuff. So let's talk a little bit about Art Corner this week. So a couple of things for Art Corner. Before I reference the things that I want to, I'll just give everybody a little bit of info about the 48. It went well. As I said, my job usually ends on Friday evenings, and it did. And it is, I think overall it's a good thing that we didn't have the show last week, because we did spend about 6 hours putting the story together. I think that we got our prompt at about 6:30-ish, and I think that I got the final script over to Justin around midnight or 1. So this year we had a tough roll of the dice as to genre. So typically the way that it works is you're given a genre, you're given 2, and you can choose between the 2. And the 2 that we got were climate film and period piece. Neither of which sounded incredibly appealing at first. We ultimately ended up going with period piece. We just did something that was set in the 60s. And just so that everybody knows about the prompts, I don't know when this will be available for public viewing. I know that they're going to be having a screening of it later this month, and then depending on how it does in the competition and stuff, it might not be available for a while. But just so that everybody knows, the character was either John or Joan Rogers. The quote was, or rather the piece of dialogue that had to be used was, "I'll have it ready by noon." And the prop was a snow globe. So we had fun with it. I think that the process was, maybe there were a little too many people in the room for the writing process of everything. But I still am happy with what we put together, and obviously happy with the product that they put together on film. You know, Justin's always a force. So even if we're not 100% going into it, he usually captures something good on film. So overall, I think it was successful. And happy birthday, Avram, by the way. That's, I thought I saw something about that in the Discord. Happy freaking birthday. Everybody say happy birthday to Avram. Okay, so Art Corner stuff. Official stuff for Art Corner. The first thing I wanted to talk about is a documentary that my wife and I finished recently, and we kind of burned through it. We just kind of like wanted to check it out to see what it was, and yowzer. It's only 6 episodes, so it's a limited series, and it's about Vince McMahon. And for anybody who doesn't know, Vince McMahon is or was the CEO and, you know, arguably the biggest brain behind the WWF, or I should say the WWE, World Wrestling. And man, it is It was pretty crazy. It was cool to get to see like all the wrestlers and also obviously like everybody's take on everything. And what's really interesting about it is that during its production, during the filming, is when a lot of the stuff went down with the, you know, the allegations and the text messages and stuff coming out. So like they were making the documentary anyway. They were just making a documentary about Vince, and then that stuff happened. So very, very entertaining. Highly recommend checking it out. It's very interesting. In particular, if you grew up in that era and had ever had any kind of interest or enjoyment from wrestling, really, really interesting. Some crazy stuff in there. Yeah, it was. We breezed through it. I was kind of surprised because I didn't know that my wife would be as interested in it as I was, and I didn't even know how interested in it I was. And man, we burned through, I think, 4 of them and then just finished the other 2 the next day. So it's really, really interesting. Another quick note on Art Corner, just something that I think is great because it's officially out now. My buddies and I have been playing Satisfactory a lot. I mean, like a whole lot. And oh boy, yikes, howdy, is it fun. So if Satisfactory, it's a factory building game. And it was in beta for several years. I think it was in beta for like 5 years, and then a week or 2 ago, maybe it's been out for longer. Maybe it's been a month or so now, but they released the official game, Satisfactory 1.0, and I highly, highly recommend it. I think it's game of the year. It might be one of my favorite. It is arguably one of my favorite games I've ever played, and the more that I play it, it's becoming my favorite. It's just so well made. You could tell that it's a labor of love. And so if you've ever been into like Factorum or Minecraft or Raft, or it's kind of like a builder RTS kind of, well, not, I guess not really RTS, but just like a factory builder / survival. Man, it's so fun. So definitely check out Satisfactory. That's great. And then also one final note on Art Corner, just a reminder for everybody, the Bardadvice Intelligence stream is on Sundays at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on Songaria's YouTube channel. It is a podcast / stream. It's really more of a stream than a podcast, but it's a show where Song and I build out AI music. We do it individually, and we also do it with the audience. So if you've not ever participated in that, you should come check it out because it's big fun. We do it every Sunday at 9 p.m. So that's all the Art Corner stuff, and I've been talking too much because we've got a lot of questions to get to, and I want to try and get to them. So we've got 7 questions and a follow-up we're going to try and breeze through. So let's do that. So the first question of the evening is from Chris. I could have just guessed that, I suppose. And Chris asks, Nightmare D&D table. Which people / characters / concepts would make the worst game to play? DM included. Thank you for the question, Chris. This was a fun exercise to think about. Now, I didn't do anything where I made any kind of image for this. I considered it, but I thought I was just getting too in the weeds as to like what image would represent each thing. So I'm just going to talk about it. This is the party. This is the Nightmare party, inclusive of a Nightmare DM. So, Edgelord Rogue, Power Gaming Fighter, Rules Lawyer Paladin, Indecisive Wizard, Murder Hobo Barbarian, and the Horny Bard. All DM'd by a vengeful DM. So we can go through those if you want, but I think that that's the worst table ever. Edgelord Rogue, for obvious reasons, you know, you got a rogue, somebody that's trying to be like the center of attention. They're trying to seem the coolest. They're putting more into their individual character's achievement than the rest of the party. Power gaming is kind of the same. So when you have like a power gamer, again, they want to do the most damage. They want to be the big hero at the end who gets the last hit on the BBEG and stuff. So, Power Gaming Fighter, nightmare, big nightmare. Rules Lawyer Paladin, although that can apply to any class. I don't know why I went with Paladin. Maybe just because it seems to be the most connected to the 44 Rules DM is definitely the worst. Or a noob DM that doesn't know how to control the chaos. That's true. Rules lawyer paladin. Yeah, somebody that's going to just, I mean, really any class, but somebody that's just going to sit there and just be like, well, actually, that's not what it says. It's like, okay, well, actually, what are we doing? Are we trying to have fun? Indecisive wizard. Also, that can apply really to any class, although it seems to happen the most with wizards. Maybe it's because they have the most spell versatility. But, man, it's like, okay, it's your turn. And then 3 hours later, and it's like they haven't decided what they're casting. So that is terrible. Murder hobo barbarian, probably true of any class, but the barbarian in particular, it's awful because since they're a barbarian, they probably can get away with killing anyone and anything. Like in particular, like if you're just like in a bar or something, if you've got like a big barbarian that's stacked with strength and a big great axe, like, you know, it just lends itself to just like, oh, well, I'm going to just fight this guy. And that's not always fun. And then the horny bard, you know, for obvious reasons. And by the way, not for any reason as to like it would be offensive to my sensibilities. I mean, it might be to other people at the table, but more so just because it's such a played out trope, you know? I'm about like trying new stuff. And so, you know, I think that all of the things that I've listed are they're known enough that I can just say them and people know what it is. And so that's, you know, that's not fun. You always, you know, you want to try new stuff. So, druid who wants to conjure woodland beings to turn the party into T-Rexes. Ain't no party like a dinosaur party. Wizard that doesn't know what spells are or do. Any class with main character syndrome. Fighter that doesn't like to get hit and hides behind the spellcasters. That seems crazy to me. And maybe that's because I've mostly played fighters in my career as a player, but hide. I'm the tank. Dude, you're going to have to fight me for first position if I'm a fighter. Sentinel plus Polearm Master, anything. Any players who have their volume stuck at 11 or who argue with the DM on what's allowed. Yeah, rules lawyer. I guess that power gamer or edgelord can kind of fall into the category of the anti-rules lawyer because I feel like my initial thought of somebody who's a rules lawyer is saying like that's not how it's written. And then the antithesis of that is the power gamer or the edgelord rogue that's like, well, it doesn't say that I can't do that. It doesn't specifically outline this instance that I'm mentioning, so I should be allowed to do it. You can keep that too. That'd be at that same awful table. Rules. There are no rules. The real-life horny bard PC that wants to bang everything. The wizard that takes 10 minutes to take his turn. Yep. Barbarian that always punches everything in the face and never asks any questions. Yeah. And then also a vengeful DM, too. Like, I don't, you know, I've spoken before about the fact that I don't have a tremendous amount of DM experience beyond, like, the show, you know. Like, IRL, I've only DM'd probably a handful of times. Most of my career is as a player. But that said, like, my goal as the DM is always to, like, make everybody have fun. And I never, like, took it offensive or personally or got upset if somebody was trying to like break the game. For one, you can just break the game right back, you know, remember your DM power. But also, like, the goal is for everybody to have fun. And so I don't want to stand in the way of somebody having fun. I would rather like have to come up with a harder challenge because I know they can do this broken thing than like not allow them to do it. Or more importantly, like letting real personal stuff that's like in real life out of game affect how I'm DMing in game. Or yeah, like I just don't like that. That's not cool. A spiteful DM. Yeah. Weeb player who has read too many overpowered MC mangas and can't stop trying to do broken things. Had to stop playing with us when he got arrested for... Whoa. Well, that's awful. Sorry to hear about that. That's terrible. But yeah, so that's my nightmare table for us to start into spooky season, into officially we're in Halloween month. So that's exciting. So thank you for the question, Chris. That was fun. I got to keep moving because I've got more. And I've got another one from you later as well, but thank you for the question. The next question, according to the list of names, is from Sander. And Sander asks, hello and happy Halloween season to you and everyone at Man Shorts. As the holiday approaches, my group and I are planning on doing a horror-themed one-shot. It's fun. I'm setting up a giant haunted house. Oh, I put haunted twice. A giant haunted house for them to explore. If possible, I'd like to avoid them splitting the party, which is wishful thinking, I know. Any tips on how to force them to stay together without making it seem like blatant railroading? Thanks. Well, thank you for the question, Sander. Sounds like a good time. One-shots are always fun. Holiday-themed one-shots are even more so fun. And then Halloween's the best holiday, so 3 for 3. I wrote something about this, so chat, feel free to voice your opinions in the chat. I'm going to read through my little monologue here about what I wrote about this. So, there's a few different ways you can approach this. If you want to get aggressive with it, you can work the access of the house into the lore itself. So, like if the house is haunted by a spirit or spirits who have been, you can keep certain doors locked such that they have to be explored in a particular order or like within a particular time frame. You can also do it with a warning beforehand by saying that you could implement something. You could implement mechanics to de-incentivize them to split the party. So, for example, you could say that you're more than welcome to do whatever you want in terms of exploration, but if you're alone, you have disadvantage on perception, attacks, saves. So they're de-incentivized to not split the party, or rather incentivized to stay together. So they still have the option to split, but it just would be really silly to do so, or really dangerous. Another way to do this is that maybe each of them has some sort of a token or a pendant, and those pieces have to be together or within like a particular range of one another to summon or have the BBEG or other monsters like reveal themselves, like a Captain Planet thing. Requires the power of the party combined. Or another thing is you could even do something as simple as the party only having one flashlight. So personally, I like the idea of locking the doors because it acts as like a physical barrier to splitting the party, but it also adds to the RP. Because like I was saying earlier, it's like if you've got this spirit or something that doesn't want them going into certain rooms, that adds a level of like, somebody's going to go over here and check this door and then they can't get in. So the other thing too, the last note that I'll say before I look over at what chat's been saying is that remember that you're the DM and that you control all of the triggers for combat and encounters. So you could allow them to split the party early and let them do some exploring on their own, but set it up so that not much is really accomplished until they investigate together. So it's kind of a waste of time without them realizing it. That's, they're just kind of going along and doing their thing and they're not making much progress. And then it's like, oh, wait, maybe we should all like reconvene and see what the deal is. And then something happens when they come back together. So, all right, let me see what's going on in chat. Use weird spatial magic. When they try to leave the room and split the party, they immediately re-enter the room. Oh, that's cool. I didn't even think about that. When they're together, they're more powerful. Magical shackles. Do the wrong order and everyone is standing at the front door again. That's interesting. Could also make them get creative with fighting and puzzle solving. Make the party get separated. Haven't played a bard since 3.5. Any tips? Play. That'd be my best tip. You'll be fine. 5e is significantly more straightforward than 3.5, just in terms of like rules and access to abilities. In my estimation, 5e kind of streamlined a lot of the coolest stuff from 3.5. So if you know 3.5, you'll be fine. Play 5e. It's fun. You can also still play 3.5. Still out there. The further they go into the house alone, the more levels of exhaustion they take. That's true. Yeah, any of those kind of like effects that they would have on them, you could exacerbate those if they're alone. So maybe it's a thing where it's like low light vision, But if you were alone, you'd have to have dark vision to see. Take Lovely, Bard, and Fireball at level 6. Oh, this is advice for the Bard. It takes teamwork to push open a secret bookshelf door. Yeah, that's a thing too. Like, that's a great point, is that it could be a thing where, like, say you've got a party of 5 and somebody finds a room that has like a pentagram on the ground. Somebody's going to have to be standing in each point of the star for the book, the secret bookshelf to move open to like reveal the basement or whatever. So any of those kind of things where it's either a puzzle or, an actual combat with the monster, like you can create your own kind of restrictions as to, or really, I guess I should say prerequisites for those things to happen. So without directly telling the players this, in your head, well, unless they're all together in the library at the same time when the clock strikes, nothing's going to happen. And then just, let them do what they want to. But locking the doors is easy, because inevitably, I think even if you had a warning of like, don't split the party, and I know this because I'm this guy, inevitably, as soon as everybody gets in the house, somebody's going to be like, well, I'm going to go and check out the attic. Just lock the doors, and then you can explain it magically. Pentagram sounds like you're trying to enter the house. Yeah, definitely not stealing any ideas or IP from Baldur's Gate 3. Wisdom saving throw every time they're alone. Yeah, and you could treat it like that too, where it's like, because fear is a thing. So, it's like, sure, you can explore the house on your own, but after so many rounds, you have to roll a fear check to see if you become frightened, to see if you become, paralyzed with fear, effectively. So I would say that the easiest thing to do is just cut them off at the doors. If you want to allow them the agency, then just make splitting the party a real headache for them from a mechanic standpoint so that they don't want to do it. That's the easiest thing, because they'll inevitably ask about it, and then you could just be honest and be like, oh, yeah, you could totally go by yourself. But remember, if you by yourself, you're more susceptible to becoming frightened, and you have disadvantage on attack and perception and this, that, and the other. And then it's like, oh, well, maybe I'll just stay with the party. So yeah, you could still allow them the choice. Just, let them know which is the right choice. Whatever is happening in any given room or hallway, or whatever a solo person won't see, the specter following you around, only spectators can see the secrets. Yeah, I think that there's tons of different ways you can do it and accomplish what you want to. So I think that there's an answer in there, Sander, and I appreciate the question. Hopefully you got something out of that, either from me or from chat. So let's keep moving. The next question is from Kayla. And Kayla asks, hi, Bard. In reading through the new PHB, it looks like Dragonborn are just granted the ability to fly at 5th level. Specifically, they sprout spectral wings as a bonus action. It lasts for 10 minutes. Anyway, I just wanted to see what you thought about it. Isn't it just a little broken? Thank you, and have a great day. Thank you for the question. Yeah, I didn't know about this. So it only seems to me to be a little bit busted because it's a bonus action. So if it were me, I'd make it a full action. So my knee-jerk reaction was, whoa, this is crazy. This seems kind of unfair. But then it occurred to me, like, well, fly's like a 3rd level spell. So any kind of 5th level spellcaster could fly. And it works very similarly, by the way. Mechanically, it has a duration of 10 minutes. It is concentration, which I thought was interesting. But I don't think that it's broken strictly from a mechanical standpoint, but more from an economy standpoint. Like, I love Dragonborns. Cowboy Owl was a Dragonborn. My 3/5 half-orc Dragon Shaman was one of the favorite characters I've ever played, and it was mostly because I had a breath weapon. In fact, I remember when 5e came out and Dragonborns were a playable race, I thought that it was a little busted that they just get breath weapons. But I mean, it makes sense, like, from a species standpoint. I did just, I was like, I don't know about that. I think that they should have made it an action, because since it's a bonus action, then they can attack with it, and that seems a little, I don't know, it seems a little wild for 5th level. Now, I did read that it is once per long rest, and I don't know if anything increases that ever. So that kind of keeps it kind of fair, because it really isn't any different than dropping the spell. But casting a spell is an action. So obviously, if you were a fighter and it was an action, you could do that, and then you would still have a second action. So you'd still be able to do like a fly and attack. But the idea of sprouting wings and then still having an economy to attack makes sense for a fighter. So does it burn a spell slot? From my understanding, it's a class feature, or a species feature rather, and it doesn't cost a spell slot. It's just kind of like an ability that they get, and it's once per long rest. So even it being a bonus action isn't terrible, to be honest. I don't know. I also too approach a lot of these things from an understanding of 3.5, because 5e I think really up to the level as to what you can do from a basic standpoint. The kind of, I've said this ad nauseum in the past, but it's the kind of stuff that you can do in 5e would take you several books. It would take you lots of reading and understanding how to combine things to accomplish what is just available as a subclass route in 5e now. So, it being just a bonus action in 5e in comparison to a lot of other things that are just bonus actions maybe isn't that broken. But I would make it an action. The half-dragon in 3.5 had a 50% chance to have wings from birth or creation. Yeah, the half-dragon. So I was the class that I took, or the character that I made in 3.5 was a half-orc, but it was a dragon shaman, which was just like a class. So actually the breath weapon was a class feature. I remember when Dragonborn are large characters just grew wings, and if they were smaller, they would grow wings but couldn't fly. What's the point of choosing one race over another unless there's special feat? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Other than RP, there really isn't a reason, And, they took away the pluses and minuses on the abilities, which was, in my opinion, one of the major factors in deciding the race that you were going to play, because it would be based on what would be most helpful for your class, right? So if you were running a strength-based fighter or a barbarian, it benefited you to run an orc or a half-orc because they got bonuses to strength. It will last for one encounter, then you need a long rest. If it's refreshed during short rests, then it would be kind of OP. So I'll never play anything other than 3.5. Sorcerer can quicken spell, fly, basically making it a bonus action. Oh, okay. Well, if that's the case, then it's fine. I think for me, those kind of things really become an issue when it's something that you couldn't do otherwise. And I get it. That's kind of the whole point of the deal, is that it's you can only do this with this. But some of that stuff is just if what's good for the goose is good for the gander, I think, in terms of mechanical capabilities. Because what happens is it starts boiling down to a point where you say, well, then, if there's nothing objectively stronger or more effective than this particular combination of species and class and ability, then why do the other things even exist at all? So Dragonborn in 3.5, you had to choose whether fly or... Yeah, you had to choose. And I like that. Maybe that would be something that would keep it more fair. Because, you're just... I guess it's once per long rest, but how many times are you going to be using something like fly? Spellcasters just fly around all the time? Been turning your campaign into a module? Oh, yeah. Heck yeah. I want to see that when that's done. Don't remember having to choose. I don't think I ever ran a Dragonborn in 3.5. So I couldn't speak to that. But I don't know. I also think, too, when it comes to stuff that's broken, it's all personal preference as to, whether it works for you and your party and your campaign. You know, some stuff that might seem super broken to others, or to some people seems totally normal to others, because it depends on the scale at which you're operating as far as challenge. You know, if you've got like a super experienced DM, a lot of times they'll kind of like throw down challenges to players to do something that's gonna scare them, or or you know, make it super easy for them. I know that Ethan is kind of that way to an extent, not outright. Like Ethan, I don't think would ever be like, oh yeah, do it. But I think that Ethan's been DMing for long enough that he probably has that kind of mindset of like him seeing it as a challenge, of like, oh, okay, you want to try to do this thing because you want to break the game, go ahead. It's not like there aren't races that have wings and can fly double their walking speed. Yeah, I know. It's also part of me that, like I was saying earlier, it's like, if this thing is the best thing, then why would you be anything else? If you ran the Dragonborn with a half dragon template, you didn't have to choose either for fly or breath weapon. Oh, you got them. So many times as a GM, we just played F the rules. Yeah, I agree. Well, yeah, and that's like one of the Gary Gygax quotes, right? Like, don't let the DMs know that they don't need the rules. Something to that effect. All right, well, we've got to keep going because I got more questions. But thank you for the question, Kayla. I hope that gives you an answer. The next question of the evening is from Matthew. And Matthew asks, hey, Chaz, thank you for being there for us every week. I look forward to hearing your voice on the back end of the work week. Thank you. That's nice of you to say. This might have been answered before, but how did you overcome drinking? How did stopping change your relationship with people close to you? How did it change your game? I love the things you produce. I might not agree with you on topics, but I enjoy your honesty. Well, I appreciate that, Matthew. Thank you. And we need more of that in the world these days. That, you know, just because we don't agree on everything doesn't mean that we can't, you know, see each other and respect each other as human beings. So I appreciate that sentiment. So, drinking. I wrote some stuff about this. The short answer as to how I overcame drinking was that I really, really wanted to stop. And I think that that's true of most things. Obviously, it's an addiction, both physically, habitually, mentally, emotionally. But I am a believer that if you really want to do something, then you'll probably do it. I don't know how extensively I've spoken about my issues with alcohol, but it was pretty bad in the past. There were times I would like wake up not remembering how I got home. I'm sure I've said or done things to people over the years that are regrettable and I would never do sober. But it's the same way that I quit smoking cigarettes. It's just that I really wanted to. For me personally, I have enough issues going on with my weight and my teeth, and, you know, I don't have the greatest family history when it comes to stuff like heart disease, diabetes, etc. So all that's to say, I knew that I couldn't afford to keep drinking like I was. You know, or smoking cigarettes for that matter. But because it just exacerbates all of that stuff, you know? And more than just from a health perspective, you know, how many people die in drunk driving accidents every year? So that would be really sad. That would be a really sad ending to my story if I died in, you know, in my 30s or even in my 20s or something, just, you know, because I wanted to drink and feel good. My experience with alcohol is that it's a high that you can't really control past a certain point. And I was a person who couldn't just have one or two or three drinks. If I was drinking, I was blacking out. So, you know, towards the end of my drinking, I was drinking really heavily. I was going through like a handle of gin every 2 or 3 days. It was starting to energize me. That freaked me out. That was, I think, when I really started like having the conversation with myself of like, okay, I need to stop this, because it was getting to a point where it was like, you know, I was getting energy from that first drink. And that was weird. It was really difficult for the first week or two, but then after that, and subsequently, it got a lot easier. As far as my relationship with other people, I don't know how much it changed much. I'm very lucky that I've had, you know, I'm still friends with the same friends I've been with for 20, 30 years. That I'm just really fortunate that way. And, you know, my friends drink, but None of them ever drank like me. You know, they can all, like, for the most part, afford to just, like, have a drink or two like a regular person. But I was never that way. And the only other person who did drink that way like I did is Jay, who plays Lance on the show. And he's been sober for longer than me. I think he quit like a year before me. So both of us have been sober since. I don't know if any specifics about my game have changed, other than I'm more likely to remember things and pay attention to them than when I was drinking. Overall, I think it's a personal choice, and you just have to make that if you decide to. Like, and I think if you want it enough, you'll quit. I think that you can do it. I did it. You know, I think the fact that I did it is proof enough that anybody can do it, because I have a super addictive personality, and I'm also really stubborn. It's hard for me to break habits in general. So I never thought that I would ever quit, and I was able to. So, all right, let me see what people are saying in the chat. Addiction to alcohol is partly fed by society's permission. Seriously, we sell little bottles at the gas station. Yeah, we definitely do. Well, and also people make it, you know, it's I think that's a weird one, right? Like, we're not allowed to advertise cigarettes or like pornography or guns or anything on television, but you can, not only can you advertise for alcohol, you could do it all the time on anything. You could do it at the Super Bowl. You could do it, you know, stuff that, you know, families of all and people of all ages are watching. There's no problem with alcohol. I think that that's weird. It was super difficult to cut back. If you can calm down aspects of your life and try to make an environment that fosters self-care, one step at a time, be safe with yourself. That's good advice, yeah. One step at a time, I think, is really good advice, too. I always think of that, you know, that quote about how to eat an elephant one bite at a time. And that's hard. You know, there's things about myself, obviously, that I could still improve, but used to drink and smoke obscene amounts. Smoking was much more, I agree with that, River, by the way. It was easier to quit drinking than it was to stop smoking cigarettes. 3-pack-a-day smoker, yeah, dang. I was never that bad. I was at least a pack a day. Hear you there. I had both trauma and anxiety and noticed alcohol would temporarily cure it, and that scared me. Yeah, it's bizarre. Like, you can really, I don't know. It's dangerous, in my opinion. And listen, I don't judge people that drink. I don't think there's anything wrong with drinking, but I tend to agree with the notion that we've got a drinking problem in the country. It certainly is, like, shockingly normalized. Because, like, at least with stuff, and we talked about this last week, right? Like, at least with cannabis, there's some medicinal properties there. Alcohol is just poison. It doesn't really do good for anybody. And sure, they come up with these studies where it's like, you know, doctors found that a glass of wine a week is good for your heart. And it's like, well, that's not because it's alcohol. It's because it thins your blood. Anything that thins your blood is probably good for your heart. Notice that there are no ads for guns. Yeah. There's no ads for, you know, anything that not necessarily isn't inherently wrong, but could be used for wrong. The only thing that I could really think of is, like, alcohol. Of course, you know, we've also got a sugar problem, too, but that's a whole different conversation. Had an experiences where a couple persons actually went off-road, bounced off on railroad tracks, crashed through ice into a river. That's really sad. Was lucky with smoking. A friend let me borrow a vape and just kind of switched without trying because it tasted better. Good. That's good. And look, you know, I'm not gonna promote vaping either. I don't think that vaping is necessarily a good thing, but I'll tell you what, it's better than smoking cigarettes. If you're addicted to cigarettes, get you a vape. All the data that we have shows that it's way safer. You know, you want to have a conversation about whether or not nicotine is good for the brain or the heart or whatever, that's fine. But, like, we know for sure that there's stuff like bleach and rat poison in cigarettes. So, someone who doesn't have a gene to process alcohol, it's really hard when people that know this would still demand I drink with them. Sorry to hear that, Ruby. That's social pressures. I've always resisted those. Realizing that you have a problem is usually the hardest step. Once you're there, you can begin to take steps. Yeah, and there's, you know, probably for a lot of alcoholics, certainly for me, there's a level of, like, I'm good. Not me. Sure, other people have problems, but I can handle it. It's like, that's a fallacy, dude. If you think you might have a problem, you probably do. And yeah, you're going to have to come to terms with that and admit it. And that's where I was when I was realizing that it was giving me energy. I had like a genuine conversation with myself where I was like, okay, this is a problem. I got to stop. So, all right, we've got more stuff to get to. So thanks for the moment there. Hopefully that gives you an answer, Matthew, and I appreciate the email. This next one is, we're going to take a quick shift. We've got 3 more questions and then a follow-up, so we're going to try and burn through them. But this next one is big fun. So thank you for the question, Matthew. This next one is from Chris. Chris asks, if each class was represented by a piece of Halloween candy, who would be which? Also, would that candy change the class you'd want to play? Thank you for the question, Chris. This was big fun. I had a lot of fun making this, so go ahead and sound off in chat what you think, but I'm going to run you through what all the class candies are. So, barbarians are warheads, not just for the clever wordplay, but also for their effect, a smash in the mouth, which causes you to wince and maybe even rage, but after the rage ends, it's really a warm and sweet experience, like a lot of barbarians. Bards are Skittles. Everybody loves them. They're usually very sweet and colorful, but remember, sour Skittles are a thing. The cleric is candy corn, a bit of an acquired taste. I feel like people either love it or hate it, but a staple nonetheless. Druids are almond joys. I don't know why. Fighters are Snickers bars, a Halloween classic. Most everybody likes them, plus they're packed with protein. I mean, in comparison to other candy, of course. Monk is a Twix, a balance of caramel and chocolate. Paladins are Reese's Cups, a fan favorite that no one can resist. Rangers are peanut M&Ms, not for everyone, but the people who like them love them. Rogues are Milky Ways, too much for some, but undeniably good. Sorcerer is Pop Rocks, unpredictable magic that tends to burst when you least expect it, flashy and surprising. The Warlock is dark chocolate, perhaps Hershey's Special Dark, or maybe a Mounds bar, a nod to the mysterious and dark forces that surround them. And Wizards are Smarties, another staple, but also a turn on the name, since Wizards are the intelligence class. So that's what I got. Those are my opinions. What do we got? Rangers, candy corn, no way. Paladins are Three Musketeers. I thought about giving Three Musketeers to either the Paladin or the Rogue, but then I couldn't really explain it. Because I think the thing about Three Musketeers, first of all, Three Musketeers might be the most criminally underrated candy bar of all time, whether we're talking about Halloween or not. I don't know why more people don't like Three Musketeers. Three Musketeers is so good, dude. Whipped nougat? Come on, dude. You don't need, and listen, I know about candy. If clerics are candy corn, then the rogues are Milky Way Midnights. I couldn't think of the name. Pirate. I couldn't think of the dark chocolate Milky Way. I guess I could have just Googled it. But at the time, it was like driving me crazy. It's midnight. That's what it is. Druids are black licorice. Nobody seems to like them for some reason. I feel like black licorice is another thing like candy corn. Like, in my life, either people that I've talked to either are like, oh, no, or they're like, oh, yeah, I love licorice. Why would you... Wait, what you said is a class where candy... What? The Ranger is candy corn because no one likes them, but they keep popping up and no one knows where they came from. I don't like all this disparaging Rangers, Flint. I love Rangers. Rangers are like my top 3 classes. It's like Fighters, Bards, and Rangers. Rangers of... I could see Rangers being Raisinets. Rogue is now and laters. The Eat More. Yeah, Nougat's so good. Oh, man, I didn't think about Baby Ruth's. But although I don't know who that would really apply to. What are psionics in 5e? Yeah, psionics is like telekinesis and stuff, right? Well, it's like abilities of the mind. Oh, yeah, sorry, Avram. Yeah, it was which candy would each class be? So that's what we were talking about. I think Barbarians for Warheads is pretty good. That's pretty solid. What else did I say? All right, I'll go through them again, just in case anybody missed it. Barbarians are Warheads, Bards are Skittles, Clerics are Candy Corn, Druids are Almond Joys, Fighters are Snickers bars. Monks are Twix. Paladins are Reese's Cups. Rangers are peanut M&Ms. Rogues are Milky Ways. Or maybe midnight Milky Ways. But that would be inclusive of it, right? Sorcerers are Pop Rocks. Warlocks dark chocolate, like Hershey Special Dark or a Mounds bar. And then wizards are Smarties. Artificer or Alchemist? Well, you know, Artificer's not a base class. Neither of those are. But Artificer, I feel like Artificer would be something like nerds. So, can't think of a Baby Ruth without thinking of Sloth from the Goonies. Oh, yeah. All right. Well, that was fun. Did just want to burn through that one because we do have 2 more questions and a follow-up I'd like to get to before we do a little chat. And I don't want to stay on too late because I'd like to play some Satisfactory. So, thank you for the question, Chris. That was fun. The next one is from Isaac. And Isaac asks, "Hey Charles, I've been seeing a few articles lately about how D&D can be an effective form of therapy. Psychologists have found that the game can provide a structured, safe space for the exploration of psychopathologies. Johns Hopkins University has its own D&D therapy group called Social Skills Quest. What are your feelings on this? Do you think the same applies for other group games?" Thank you for the question, Isaac. I think that's great. And it makes sense to me. I've certainly always used it that way, maybe without realizing it, but in general, I think it's good for people to have some sort of an outlet, whether it's like a sport or reading or video games or tabletop games. What's great about D&D is that you're essentially given a clean slate. So you have, I think, in my opinion, a lot more agency than you do with your character and your character's motivation than you do in those other instances that I mentioned. So you're essentially given social armor by your character, right? So like all of a sudden, no one in the room is really judging you. They're judging your character. I think this lends itself to a lot of opportunities for people who aren't very social to watch and participate in role play that doesn't really matter. Like if you say something stupid in real life, that can be really embarrassing or make you feel stupid. But if you say something stupid at a D&D table, it's fun. It becomes part of the story. It makes your character interesting. So I think that in that, it also gives you the opportunity to do and say things that you might not normally do or say in your real life. And more importantly, it lets you see how those words or actions might play out. It's like a social encounter simulator. That's what it is. It's a social simulator. It's very powerful. As for it being the case for other games, I'm not so sure about that. I think it depends on the game. Personally, I think that the biggest factor here is that most D&D is cooperative. So when it comes to stuff like, I don't know, playing like Modern Warfare or like Madden, I'm sure that that's a good outlet overall, but it is those games also are like highly competitive, which can be toxic at times. Whereas games like D&D or Baldur's Gate 3 or Satisfactory, they create environments where you're working with your peers to overcome adversity or like a common goal or something. So I think that that's a big part of it. It's just a matter of like, what's the goal here? And with D&D, usually the goal is to have fun. And so I think it's a lot more relaxed than a lot of those other games. You know, if you were to just jump in like a Fortnite lobby or something, for one, that's a competitive game. But for two, people would judge you as a person as to like how good you are at playing the game. In my experience, D&D really isn't that way. You're kind of judged on like what your character is and what you come up with. And, you know, you don't have to... There's no rules, I guess, when it comes to that stuff. There's only mechanical rules. There's no rules about who you are as a character. When do you play Baldur's Gate 3? Well, I haven't played in a while, but we do have on our channel a couple playthroughs. Team building, role playing. Depends on who you're playing with. Sometimes it's hard to open up around friends for fear of ruining the friendship. Other times it's hard around strangers because you don't have the trust yet. I think it's a great idea. If I countless times that I had D&D game we were deployed in Iraq, 10 to 15 players, and it was way for us to take off our mind of the dude. D&D super popular in the military. And it makes sense, you know, when you're in these professions where there's a good amount of downtime and, you know, you don't have, like, Nintendo's sitting around. So if you've got pen and paper, you can play D&D. Among Us. Still don't remember the other players or people, too, so don't say anything too out of pocket. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a good note to say, too. Like, don't use it as an excuse to just, like, be a jerk and, like, say crazy stuff for the sake of saying it. But yeah, I think it's a good opportunity for people to kind of like test the waters on stuff because you're playing a role. You're not you. As long as you keep in mind that your GM is not a therapist. Yeah, that's true. Don't use this as a replacement for therapy if you need therapy. Some friends can play in the game. Others have no idea how to play. That's true. So, honor mode win. Sheesh. I don't know about that, dude. I'm addicted to Satisfactory now, so I don't know. You might not ever get me off of that game. All right. One more question this evening. Oh, shoot. And then we have a follow-up, too. So actually, let me just do this. Let me do the follow-up first. So thank you for the question, Isaac. Let me do the follow-up real quick. It's just a quick note, and then we can go into the last question, which will lead us into a chat. So the follow-up is from Iron Mist, who has sent in questions about crossbows before. Just wanted to show this because I thought it was cool. Hi, Bard. With the release of the 2024 PHB, I have an update on my crossbow characters. The improvements to the use of crossbows have gotten other players to see the benefits of using crossbows. My characters have been ahead of the times for years. Well, thank you for the update, Iron Mist. That's cool to hear. It's always good to... It always feels good when you're, like, ahead of the mainstream. Been that a few times with a few things over the years. Glad to hear that more people are inspired to use crossbows. I also saw that they officially added firearms to the ranged weapons, which, can I just say, it's about time. That needed to happen 20 years ago or so. So, glad that it did. So... All right, thank you for the follow-up info, Iron Mist. That was cool. We have one last question from John this evening, and that'll direct us into chat. So, the last question of the evening is from John, and John asks, well, Chaz, I don't have to tell you that the Jaguars are the last winless team in the NFL. Do you think one or many of the members of the coaching staff will be fired mid-season? Maybe they'll start Mac Jones. Think of it this way. If things stay this bad, at least you'll get a high draft pick next year. Thank you, John. Yeah, it's big bad. It's awful. We're real terrible. So, okay. Let me just say this before anything. I don't think that Mac Jones is the answer. And that's not a knock on Mac Jones. But I really believe that the biggest issue that we have is the coaching, specifically the offensive coaching and the offensive line. That said, I don't think that Mac Jones would be doing any better than Trevor. Am I against the idea of starting him? No. Go for it. In fact, maybe they should fight a little bit for it. You know, maybe that might light a fire under Trevor. But the problem is we just gave Trevor a whole bunch of money. Like, way too much money. So we kind of hitched our wagon to that guy. Doug Peterson, on the other hand, and more specifically Press Taylor, are not as married to the organization. I know that I'm upset as a fan, especially, you know, I think like at the beginning of the season, Shad Khan said something about how this is the best team that we'd ever fielded or something, and it's like, we don't even have one win. We haven't even won once. What? How did we lose to the Browns? Listen, I understand us getting blown out on Monday Night Football against the Bills. The Bills are a solid team this year. But we're bad. Being a Jags fan is a special kind of torture. But I think that we've had a lot of good talent come through the city, only to be kneecapped by the fact that we don't have great coaching, good O-line. We haven't had a good O-line since Tony Baselli played for us, and that was over 20 years ago. So something is going to have to change. I don't think that we've been this bad since the year we went 2-14. And yes, I'm already looking at the draft next year. So it was pretty bad. You said we weren't going to discuss them. Listen, it was asked, and I tend to talk about them, but, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to do this all season. I'm not going to all season do like, oh, well, we lost again. What's going to happen? Think they're being bad. Try being an Auburn fan when we have the number 5 passing QB and the number 16 in turnovers with a 2-3 record. Probably a 3-9 record for the season. Yeah, it's tougher for college, right? Because college is a recruiting game. It's not a, there's no draft. So it's part of Bardgo. Jags mentioned it as well. Well, there you go. Trevor's doing the same exact thing as Hassan Watson is. Nothing but failing to produce. Yeah, I know. And listen, believe me, you don't have to convince me. I've been saying that I think that he's Blake Bortles 2.0 since before the season started. Since last year, I've been saying that. But it's tough because I don't know if he's been given, I don't know if it's a thing where he's been given a full shot. And this is why I say that, right? Like, look at these guys like Baker. Baker's a great example. He's your guy. He's Tampa's guy. Or Sam Darnold. Or, maybe even Brock Purdy. These guys who have been around, who've moved around to different teams, and maybe it didn't work for them. I think that Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield are perfect examples of guys where it's like, oh, it wasn't the guy. It was the organization. And I worry, and maybe the Jags worry too, and that's why they give Trevor all that money, that's what's going on with him, where they're like, well, maybe he's actually good, but we just can't tell because the O-line and the play calling is so bad. I don't know. So, hurting right now, though, and still finding ways to win with our third-string guys. Yeah, well, coaching. Years ago, there was a Super Bowl commercial talking to all the football players. What's going on tomorrow? We're all undefeated tomorrow. I don't get it. Well, we're officially in chat, so we can talk about really anything at this point. That's the answer that I have for you, John. I don't know. I will say this, they gave Trevor all that money, so if there are going to be changes made, it probably will be in coaching. Maybe we're just cursed, Could just be that. Could just be that. So what else is going on? The hurricane. Oh, okay. We personally, we being like me and Man Shorts and my wife and family, totally fine. We are fortunately inland enough that a lot of times the hurricanes aren't so bad for us. So it was really, really bad for, I know, a lot of the states above us. Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee got rocked. Those places aren't built for it. So, plus obviously, this was a Cat 4. It was really a Cat 5 because it was like 2 miles an hour off a Cat 5. So like it hit land at 5. And the Gulf is really hot this year. So I think we can expect more of that stuff. Obviously thoughts and prayers and just like feelings of hope go out to any of these people who have had their homes destroyed or lost loved ones. It's awful. Hurricanes are really scary. And in particular, when they come through those kind of areas with that kind of force, these places just, they're not geographically or architecturally, they're not designed for that. In Florida, the water table's so low, or I guess is it so high or so low? I don't know. But I guess it's low, that, we're used to it. Tennessee's not used to it. North Carolina's not used to it. Certainly not Western Carolina. So, oh yeah, happy birthday to Avram. Yeah, we're doing good things of the week. New season of BattleBots. Oh, if a new season of BattleBots ever happens. So, inundating you with questions. That's fine. I don't follow battle bots, but I'd look into it if I got a question about it. How many times to do roll a dice and then say a number that is above or below said the same number? What? Going to visit a good friend at her college for the weekend? That's cool. Did it hit as a 5? I don't think it didn't hit as a 5, but it might as well have been, because what's 5? 160? 150? It was like 2 miles an hour under what a 5 would be. So, like, for all intents and purposes, it was a 5. Wednesday was Ruby and your 31st anniversary. Everyone say happy anniversary. That's fantastic. That's really cool, Ron and Ruby. Happy for you both. 157 sustained wins. Yeah, so 160 is a 5. 157, it's 5. Move was successful. Cleared whole apartment by yourself and now sitting in the new office. Nice. It's really cool. Chaz, you could do an entire stream about sports. Oh, well, thank you, River. That's kind to say. Yeah, I've and believe me, I've thought about it. Just don't have the time, though. Yeah, definitely happy anniversary on that. That's great. Just moved to Florida. Very lucky. Didn't get what Sarasota Coast got. You're on the west coast of Florida. Yeah, it's a weird thing about Tampa. Tampa's like and obviously, knock on wood, don't want to jinx them, but Tampa seems to a lot of times avoid the brunt of it. Because what happens is rarely one will come up the middle. But what happens a lot of times with these hurricanes is they go underneath us and then they get pulled back up this way and cut across the state. And so usually they hit slightly north of Tampa. So a lot of times, like the Tampa area or even a little further south just kind of avoids that. Something terrifying no one's talking about. One of the flooded North Carolina towns is the only quarry in the world that has quartz pure enough to make crucibles for silicon wafers. It makes all electronics work. That is bizarre. Especially that we wouldn't know about that until the town flooded. Was productive this week, cleaned out the garage. Like, imagine just sitting on that gold mine and then it's like, oh, there was a natural disaster. Did you know that they have... Good thing of the week, ran a personal record for the 5K last Saturday, 33:18. That's awesome. Good for you. St. Petersburg is magical. Oh, you're in St. Pete. Tampa was north of us, and they got hit hard. Did they really? Was productive this week, cleaned out the garage, started building workbenches, split some firewood, stacked up all the hay. Have a brush pile to burn this weekend. That's always fun. Oh, yeah, we're getting into, like, bonfire weather. After 3 weeks of grinding a single named enemy in New World, I finally got the item I was grinding for to drop. Nice. They hit the East Coast and ride the coast north. The temporary moon. Yeah, what is that all about? I don't even know. I can't even keep up with stuff anymore. Maybe it's because I'm getting older, but it just seems so crazy. St. Armand Circle was hit hard, so low level. All shops were hit hard. It's a shame. It's, it's terrible. There's not much you can do. It's like, really with any natural disaster, right? It's that way with like tornadoes and fires, and really you just kind of hope for the best. So, all right. Well, here we are at the end, folks. We did it. We did it again. I can't believe it. We're back in action. So thank you very much for joining us. Before we get out of here, let's do a couple of the things that we like to do. Of course, we remind everybody once again of the email for the show, which is bardadvice@gmail.com. It also looks like bardadvice. Please send all your questions and follow-ups and stuff there. Also, if you ever want anything to go to an art corner or whatever, just send it over, bardadvice@gmail.com. Take a look at that. If you want to get some merch, you can do so over at manshorts.com or over at crackendice.com. If you want to contribute to anything that I do musically, you can do so directly via PayPal, Cash App, or Venmo, all of which are Yazik, Yahzick. We will be back next week, same Bard time, same Bard channel, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Oh, before I go, also a quick thank you again to all the members, patrons, super chatters. Remind everybody to please like, comment, subscribe, turn on notifications, rate the podcast on your respective platforms. Join the Discord. River just posted a link to it. We will be back next week, same bar time, same bar channel, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Man Shorts YouTube channel. The audio for this podcast will be made available tomorrow at 12 p.m. noon Eastern Standard Time. I hope that everybody has a fantastic weekend and an even better week, and we will see you next time.